Just stop it. The run-of-the-mill, cheesy, humdrum bullshit status quo just tires me out. What fascinates me are the industry disruptors, the superhuman frontiersmen or women who go through hell to achieve their goals. Join me as we meet and learn from those mavericks, rebels, and business leaders that aren't afraid to piss off the establishment in order to make radical change for good. Sponsored by Johto PR, the disruptive anti-PR firm that murders your competition with cinder blocks and cyanide. This is Disruption Interruption. Welcome back, everybody, to Disruption Interruption. I'm your host, KJ, and we're here today to talk with another disruptor who has steered the reins off his industry's lame, tired path of the status quo. Today's guest had to reinvent himself after COVID. Because in the digital transformation that was accelerated by COVID, client-focused enterprises are now an oxymoron, right? That term just contradicts itself. This disruptor had to figure out how to use his extensive network of professionals combined with his IT experience in business operations to transform himself. That's kind of another oxymoron too, isn't it? And now he transforms businesses into profitable, client-focused enterprises. Coming to us live from Miami, or is it Fort Lauderdale? I can't remember.
It's all the same.
Please welcome our disruptor, President and CEO of 5-Star BDM, Grant McGaugh.
Well, thank you very much, Carla. I really appreciate the introduction. You know, we say South Florida because that's really the area. It's Miami is an area in South Florida. Fort Lauderdale, it's all one big conglomerate location. So it's very hard to draw a straight line. I live right on the county line, as a matter of fact, between Dade and Broward County. So that's how I get out of bed. I'm in Broward, and I can take one step backward. I'm in Dade. So that's kind of where I'm at.
All right. Well, South Florida then, and that has a connotation to it all in itself, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah. Yes.
So Grant, let's get going here and let's talk about this whole transformation. But before we do, I want to know, what is your number one ingredient for disruption?
Well, my number one ingredient for disruption is leveraging relationships. That is it. Now, what occurred for me, and it was right before COVID in around October 2019. I've been working for a Fortune 500 company about 5 years or so, and I got disrupted. I got a phone call from my immediate boss, who we this is a national organization, and he basically said that our division was being dissolved, and I was no longer. I just did not have a job at this point. You know, anyone within the in my particular genre, which is the healthcare field, was completely disrupted. I said, well, it's been great, and you're going to get a severance and all that like that. So I immediately found myself completely disrupted, and finally, like, well, what do I do next? Now, what I have been doing is building a very robust network of professionals in healthcare and IT for a number of different years. And so when I went to a seminar, right after I found out, that I was pretty much a free agent, so a lot of people started to find out about it and say, hey, Grant, I don't have representation in South Florida. And I think it would be a great idea if you would represent my company on a commission basis in your area, because I'm in healthcare, I'm in IT, I don't have the reach. You've already built the network. And then that started the wheels turning in my mind, is that speed to market, timing. I already have an established base of clientele that other businesses would like to tap into in order to present their products or services. And it's just a matter of how I would then now position that. So disrupting myself from being a one-trick pony, right, into a entrepreneurial master of a lot of different disciplines. I come from an IT world. I understand IT, but I also understand branding. So 5-Star BDM means brand development masters. And the thing that I learned the most is that you must have a brand. As an individual, you need a brand. And you actually do have a brand whether you would realize it or not. And what I mean by that is what people say about you when you are not in the room. What is that conversation like? And how are you influencing that? And that's what I call layer one in my stack of strategies and execution. What is that conversation like? And if you don't like the sound of that conversation, then we need to have a talk. Let's go over that. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And maybe it's not even, they don't like the sound of it. It's just dead air. It's just, I don't even know what that would be. Like, I don't know the actual statistics of how many people had what you had happen to you. But I know that it was, a good subset of our population, right?
Yep.
In your particular, business department or division, like how many was that?
At that time, there was 50 people. So there was 50 people immediately that found themselves, going into another pattern. And this is right before COVID. Then COVID occurred. And I was like, wow, I might be out of an actual, I would say a W-2 job for a while. What does that look like? I'm going to have to go ahead and kind of move quickly into my business arrangements. Of course, then we into COVID. It changed everything. So from an IT perspective, now you got to remember, I've been involved in communication for a long time. I understand what we call the omni-channel approach, whether it's a phone, whether it's a video, whether it's a combination of both, and how do you gain metrics out of that, and how do you gain reach out of that? How do you then, integrate social into that framework? And what I found is that a lot of people just weren't that savvy as far as how do you utilize a Zoom or a Google Meets or a Team. They might have had it there on their desktop or maybe even in their phone and never turned it on. But now we found all of us in the behind, the lens as our primary vehicle to reach out and touch someone. And why that's important? Because when you're, let's say, physically in a meeting, and I just came back from a meeting just recently, and you might, in that meeting, you might have, anywhere from 10 to 20 people that you're going to interact with. Whereas, and that's a one time, and you've taken maybe half your day just to do that, right? Whereas in a virtual setting, right, you can talk to a lot of different people in that same 4-hour period. And now you've exponentially improved your reach, right? But there's a process to that. There's a strategy to that. And that's just one aspect of what I do from a brand perspective and looking at it from how are you utilizing time? How are you utilizing technology? How are you utilizing business and technology to expand your reach?
That's really very interesting. And since that's been a couple of years since COVID, right? What is the status quo that you're finding of individuals that have had to, or in a position now to have to reinvent themselves with this digital transformation that is not going back to the way it was, right? What is the status quo on that? They've been thrown into it. There's things that they've had to do, but are they really leveraging their networks to create these client-focused businesses or even client-focused enterprises? Tell me what's really happening.
I tell you what's really happening. I call it, I'm frozen in time. And that's where I find where people are. They're kind of stuck here like, wow, I know I need to engage. Now, give me an example. I've been in sales and I've been an IT sales professional for a very long time. So my job is to reach out and touch people, to network with people, to understand their problems and present them with a set of solutions that could possibly solve it. How do I do that? So in historically, people would do that either knocking on doors, right? They come to your office, maybe they're dropping off brochures or something to that effect, right? And then it kind of morphed into, well, you know what? I could do a lot more just calling people on the phone, right? And you saw that a lot in the 80s and the lower 90s, and people just banging out phone calls all day long. And in telemarketing now, which has, that name, but that's how they were doing it. And then it morphed into email, right? And then email was such this cool thing. I could send these great messages and people would open them up. This is where we get into what I call this digital transformation that's taking place, where people are getting used to this newer technology in order to communicate with people. So, when you do email, typically that's a text function. It's a copyright amount of messaging to a greater group of people that, again, expands your reach. So now we're in this social media world, and that's been over, let's just say 10 years or so. But a lot of people are using that on a personal note, right? Not on a business note, right? So you're doing your Facebooks and your Instagram, your TikToks and your YouTubes and whatnot. But then how are you promoting yourself from a business perspective, from a brand perspective? So then we get into that world, what I call LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is my friend. That is a business community. And what I have found with people, the status quo is I might have a presence on LinkedIn. I might be there. I might have a 10-year-old picture of myself up there. I might have minimal, information about me that's there. And I don't really post too much. I might, I'm a viewer, but I don't really engage. Right. And then you have those that do engage from time to time, but then their profile is just not clear as to who they are, what they do, and that's not putting their best foot forward. So fast forward to what I'm talking about is that your digital presence is now your physical presence. You would not go to a business meeting that you're going to sit down with someone potentially to talk about a deal, right? You're going to dress to impress. Right, you're going to put on a nice suit. You're going to have your hair together, and your whole physical appearance is going to say, "Hey, this is a good person I'm going to do business with." Why? Because first impression. What's the first impression you're going to get from this individual? You might have talked to them on the phone, but I guarantee you, once you walk into the door, they're going to formulate even newer impressions about you. Right. So when they go to your digital profile and they see you, and they go, "Wow, Grant, I thought you were different."
You had more hair back then.
Yeah, exactly. It was an older, it had more hair. You didn't upgrade. I thought you worked for so-and-so. That's not even updated. Or you haven't even what you've done is really regurgitated your resume on your LinkedIn profile.
Now, this is very common.
That's
very common.
Key. Right.
That's the status quo. So they have old pictures. They haven't really updated that they left a particular company or they're not there anymore. Regurgitation of their resume. Yeah.
And this is where they miss the aha moment. This is your opportunity to tell your story, to differentiate yourself. When you see that about page, a lot of people in the about page, it might be a couple of sentences there, or they might get a couple of bullet points about, why they are, their skill sets or whatnot. But it's not a story. This is about you. It's an opportunity to tell your story. Because what differentiates you? I know a ton of people that have a master's degree or a PhD, or they've had, different corporate jobs and that type of thing. That is not, that's not uncommon. What's uncommon is who you are, though, because who you are and how you have traversed in this world. I want to know how you solve certain issues and problems and challenges in your life. That tells you that's interesting, because that might be something I find valuable that I can utilize. I just want to engage with you because you understand, some of the things that I might even find intriguing. So that's when it comes from a brand perspective, a status quo. Let's start utilizing these social networks to be more creative, to be more expansive, because this next phase, this next platform, that's coming out of COVID, that's coming out of social media. You're starting to hear the buzz about it, but this is an actual thing. It's the metaverse in virtual worlds, and it's going to be completely immersive. So it's very important for everyone to understand how to utilize these platforms.
That's another disruption that is coming. I mean, it's already started coming. We're already, signing clients that are building financial services in the metaverse, right? Like, this is the wave, right? But you're saying, all right, guys, LinkedIn, It's been you've had a static profile forever. And maybe that was the corporate way. I mean, listen, you work for a corporation. It's like the branding department would say, look, this is how you're supposed to set up your LinkedIn. And it was like a business card. It was stationary, it was static. And you're saying, and what you've done and what you've seen happen is that because we weren't able to connect person to person anymore, right? Everything went digital. Then it was like, who the hell is this guy? They're going to go to LinkedIn. This better be a live representation of you. The status quo is no longer the framework of that stationary business card. It is a live representation, and your network is money.
Yeah. Your network is your net worth. That is how you gauge, what are my assets? You talk about assets. So you have to take a gauge on your digital assets. What does that look like? And just because it's not, here's another thing, some numbers game, like, all right, I want, 10,000 followers. Well, are they really followers? You need people that you engage with, that you have conversations with. That's your true network. You meet new people, you engage in conversation that is a commonality and an interest point to then move it into possibly a deal, if that's the case, a client, if that's the case, a job opportunity, and that type of thing, because it might not happen immediately. But if somebody says in a year or two, as I go back to what I talked about earlier, what do people say about you when you're not in the room? And they're like, there's some things that are going on in our company now. We need somebody that's involved with public relations. You know anybody? Yeah, I know Carla. That's what she does. So that conversation is happening. You're not in the room. You're not influenced They're not reading your email. At that time, they didn't run out to your LinkedIn and go find you. They already knew about you. You want to set the stage for being that go-to person. That's what's important. And from that platform, you can then have even greater discussion. So as a subject matter expert for me in management consulting for small to mid-sized businesses and entrepreneurs, I start with that framework first. Let's talk about your brand, because that becomes your platform. And then we can start coming up the stack and start talking about, all right, what are we going to do from a marketing standpoint? How we're going to project, right? Then we start taking a look at what's your business development strategy, because business development is a whole nother animal. You need to understand technology and the technology platforms that you're going to be able to utilize to grow your business. And that's part of business development. Of course, you get into the relationship building and all these kinds of assets that you need in order to be sustainable and scalable.
Amen. Amen. So how did you do it? Right? Because you all of a sudden were thrown into this, like, what the hell do I do? Right? You are in sales, so you do understand the value of a network, but your network is your net worth, right? The more attention you have on you, the more money you make. Those are, prime natural laws, right? But what did you do? You looked at yourself, you kind of reinvented your, who you were, what you solved problems with, and then how did you start engaging?
That's a great question for me, because the epiphany went on for me actually before that. I understood, it was in 2014, right? And I went to an executive sales training class. And I remember going to that class. A lot of times sales training classes, they're just kind of, boring. They're pretty static. Talking about status quo, you pretty much know what's going to happen. They're going to tell you the corporate story. They're going to bring in some executives. They're going to give you some examples, and they're going to send you out on your way. And I had an instructor that came in and said, if you are utilizing social media just to talk to your friends and family, you are missing the greatest opportunity in your sales career. I was like, whoa. Remember, this is 2014, and LinkedIn was still kind of in that, monster.com type world. You just put it out there and that kind of thing. Not really you looking at it like, oh, this is the new, a Facebook type of interaction for business. And that said, hey, He said, the people that are on this platform are the clients that you're looking to do business with. So he would show us a profile of somebody like, here's a vice president of IT sales for XYZ company. Take a look at his profile. It would be a beautifully crafted, he had a professional bio, professional headshot, a story about who he was, what he was doing, you can see the historical things that are there. And then this is what got me. He said, now take a look at your profile. Oh my God. I went to my profile, man. It was just a full body shot. I looked like this got like nothing professional about me at all. Right. And he just flat out said, would this person do business with you or even connect with you? What's the commonality? What's the story? You've already set that first impression. What's the first impression? Like, wow, that's an eye-opener experience. I need to step back, take a look at what I'm doing, and get serious about building my network. And that's what I did. I had to first develop my own story and make sure that story was consistent about who I was from a professional standpoint, that people would want to connect with me. So I started doing that. 2015, 2016, I became a part of national associations. And you get a part of associations, you extend your reach. It gets bigger. And people start to see you more than just what you were even saying earlier. Your LinkedIn, all of a sudden, it's like your company owns your LinkedIn. Oh, well, no, they don't. You own your LinkedIn. They're part of your story. That's like saying, like for me, I get separated from my company. Does that mean I no longer have a story? Does that mean I'm no longer relevant? That's just part of most people now, might stay in a particular job for maybe 4 to 5 years. That's normal. Where my previous generation, like mom's generation, they might have worked that one job for the entire life. Well, that's not the case any longer.
No, so it's not.
You own your story. You own your story. You've been owning your story for a while, Carla Jo, right?
That's true. That is true. So you learned how to own your story back then, right?
Yeah.
And so you're saying the status quo is people still aren't owning their story. They really aren't. It's really very interesting because LinkedIn has really blown up, hasn't it? It's really blown up.
600-700 million people are on the platform that are business people. I guarantee you that all the different clients that you're looking to reach out to are on LinkedIn. So that's a target market. You want to be able to connect with them and then be able to position yourself as a subject matter expert. So that's what I did 2018, 2019. So, all right, I got to reposition my story, just not being a corporate career executive, but more of an entrepreneur, right? What does that look like? How do I change that story? I had to rebuild my digital assets and make the right investments to do that. Now, do I still work in corporate America? Yes, I do. I do both because I need multiple streams of income, but they coincide and correlate into a tapestry that makes for a beautiful story.
Well, and this is the beauty of it after COVID now is that people are doing that. I was just speaking to a fractional COO the other day, and she still works in corporate America, but now she has a fractional, business on the side, and she's leveraging her story. Very interesting, but, probably not like you, but there is this entrepreneurship that is taking hold, even though people are working in corporate America, right? So how did you start engaging with your network? Like people hear tactics, and this is the thing, they get a hold of tactics and they go, oh, I've got to be on LinkedIn 2 minutes every day and respond to, and it's so far down the channel of really understanding how or why they need to network. Because once they understand that and they have judgment over it, these tactics, they could figure out for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Could they? What did you do? How did you leverage your connections when you were out of a job? And how did you make it a goldmine for you?
The main thing that I do is that I speak directly to my audience. First of all, you need to know who you're networked with. Is it your target audience? Did you get intentional about connecting to organizations and people that would be interested in who you are as a person and what you do? So you got to take a look at that. Next, present good content. People like good content. People now don't read a newspaper very often. They read their social media feed. You knowledge about different subject matters. People are going to want to tune in to you because they're like, oh, you know what? It's 8 a.m. I'm about to go ahead and my first meeting's not there 8:30. Let me see what's going on in health IT. Well, I know Grant knows all about this. Let's tune in to Grant. Let's see what's going on. And all you got to do, pull up LinkedIn, and then you'll probably see a feed on what I put out there. This just happened. I was at I still network physically as well as digitally, right? So I was at an event. There were several different executives there in the healthcare industry at a high level. We took pictures. We talked about what that the subject was about, the talk was about, right? And then I went ahead and reposted that on LinkedIn, right? I immediately got over 2,000-3,000 different views. But here's the cool factor is that I might have had, a number of those, what I call your first tier connections that were already connected with. But then I picked up like 20 to 30 other people. I had no idea who they were, but they were connected to the other people that were in my post. And now we have an opportunity. So when I would approach them, they already kind of feel for who I am. So these type of things, as you think through your strategies about growing your network, think of it the same way if you were there physically. You don't just come up to someone and start pitching them about your product or your service. They don't even know who you are because you haven't told your story. You're telling them
so you haven't even found out anything about them. Like, hi, how are you today?
Let's start there.
Yes.
How are you? What's going on with you? What brings you here today, kind of thing. And you start with that commonality. Natural curiosity will allow them to ask you. Here's the cool factor I talk about a lot when I talk to clients. You want them to start reaching out to you. You want to create such good content and conversations that people begin to reach out to you. They begin to send you good messages. Hey, Grant, I just saw you posted this and that. This is wonderful. Can we talk about that for 10, 15 minutes? Whatever. I want to get on your schedule. This is a real thing. This happened to me even physically when I was at the event. I see what you're doing. And because I have a podcast, we want to get into that. But it's like you have a podcast. Podcasting is a great way for people to get to know you and what you're about and what your expertise is and what you can do to help another person on their journey. So I applaud you, Carla Jo, for what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Well, our podcast started totally a different way, right? Yeah, we were doing quarantine press conferences for the media during COVID with all of our, particular industry leaders. And then we started inviting business leaders to it. And it was probably the first time in history you had hundreds of business leaders that were asking questions that the media were writing about. Like, what the hell do I do? I'm transforming my, Fortune 1000 business over to remote workforce, and I can't get the hardware. What's going on? And the shipping and logistics expert would say, this is what's happening in the shipping pipeline. This is the delay. This is what you can expect, and then media stories were written about it, but you're right. It has been an excellent way to network and to get to know people. And I think if anything that I've seen from this is that it's forced people to communicate more than they ever did before.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally agree with that.
So if you're going to increase your net worth, you better increase your network, and you're going to have to pony up and do it the digital transformation way. You're going to have to get off of this static quo with LinkedIn and start dynamically using it.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
and then you can branch out, right, to other platforms.
Here's the deal. Here's the hard work you're going to have to do.
Okay, good. Yeah, let's be very real to our
Very
'cause listen,
real.
the listeners here. I mean, these are CEOs of corporations. These are, people like you that have been displaced. These are professionals, right? And they're looking at how, like, I had a network before, but how do I reinvent myself? So there is hard work to it.
This is the hardest thing. The hardest thing is that you have to step back, look in the mirror, and ask yourself, what's my story? What is my real story? What is my journey about? And why would somebody else find that interesting? As somebody told me once, like, you need to be able to tell a story that you could tell at a campfire about yourself, and what's going on, and that people are just intently listening to you, right? Because it's a good story. Like, well, that's riveting. Because everyone, believe it or not, has challenges. There's intrigue in everybody's story. Like, wow, how the heck did you get out of that?
How did you live?
People think you just show up and everything's just success. Like, no.
Makes you
No,
very
it's
real,
not.
doesn't it?
It makes you real, makes you human, it makes you approachable. If anything, as COVID has taught us, especially COVID, is that we all are on this earth and we all have certain dangers that we have to deal with and upsets. If you're a sports fan, you go out and I see the guy's running for the touchdown. He's almost there. And then, oops, he's tripped up and fumbles. And the game goes the other way. And everything you thought was going your way is totally changed.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that happens in business all the time.
All the time.
And you have to be resilient. But can you tell that story? Because if you're going for a job interview or you're going to work with a potential client, that person wants to know how human you are. You can't tell me that everything that we do, we sign a contract with you and everything's just going to be, the most positive experience ever. That's not realistic. You're going to have challenges. I want to know how you handle those challenges. I want to know if you're a person that is going to stand up for me. Are you going to just, cite a bunch of legalities and whatnot and not really represent my interests? Can I count on you? What are you really about? So that's when you got to step back. And this, it's something I did, is that you get the raw data, but have someone else write the professional story, write the professional bio for you, right? And that you can then reutilize it, websites, on different social media, on podcasts, and you can have your short version, your long version, your 2-minute, your 30-second, call it your elevator pitch. But that elevator pitch has got to be spot on, and it's got to have the humanity of yourself in it. If anyone ever remembers different speeches that they've gone to, right? The thing that you truly, totally remember is definitely how they make you felt, but you usually remember the story that somebody told.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. So Grant, what's your story? Pretend we're at the campfire.
Well, you've got a little bit of that story, meaning I'm in this cushy job. I'm doing this for 4.5 years. I'm doing health IT at a high level. I just got some awards, 2018. I'm going in front of my peers. Everybody's saying, like, Grant, you got this Gold Achievement Award, man. You sold all this stuff. You are the man. This is wonderful. I wish I was just like you, right? So then I step into 2019, and maybe you don't want to be just like me, right? Because you find out, as I said earlier, I got to the goal line, and then I got tackled. I got tackled by financial problems that had nothing to do with me, but was a huge disruption to my life. And I had to step back and get resilient and think about this. I'm not younger any longer. As I once was. I have to start thinking about the end game. what does the end game look like? I'm in the fourth quarter of a very tough ball game. And I thought I was going in to score, and I just got intercepted, and they took it back for a touchdown, and they're dancing in the end zone. And here I am on the sideline. I'm looking at a ragtag team, and it's just me, and I got to get out there, and I have to score, because not scoring is not an option. It's not an option. I've got to score. I've got to do the things that are necessary to support my life. So what does that look like? Everybody's in the huddle, the family's in the huddle, and they want to hear the game plan. All right, what's the game plan? So you know what? 5-star BDM. You're like, what?
What is that?
What? People pay for that? I mean, I've never heard of that. What are you talking about? 5-star BDM. Said it first started out as business development master, because business development is what I've been doing. But I like the branding, because my network, people start telling me they liked my brand. Grant, I like the way you branded yourself. On social media is uncanny. This is what I'm getting back as feedback from others. It's not what I'm telling myself. This is what my network is telling me. My job is now to monetize that, put that together, and help other people.
That M could be, BD monetization, BD masters.
You got it. There's a lot of plays, a lot of things you can do from a marketing standpoint. To create that reach and memorization and what I would do. But because I've been exposed to so many brands in my career, in IT, I touched all the different well-known technology companies in the US on a daily basis. I understood what the needs are. Now it's just a matter of who I really want to target. Now, I didn't want to sell large, multi-million-dollar systems. That's just too much. What I wanted to do is work with people, because this is where I see in this great transformation that's taking place, that you understand that you are multidimensional. You're a multidimensional person. The human factor in everything is what's so important. And I believe people undervalue themselves. And you have to understand this one important fact: a company will only pay you what they can afford. You need to pay yourself what your value is. And only by doing that will you understand what that true value is. And the most richest people in this world are entrepreneurs. So you can't go to them and say, here's X that amount of dollars, because that doesn't equate to their true value. So understand your value. I had to understand mine and put it out there on the table and run with it. And the feedback, not so much how my story has evolved, because my story has evolved through other people. I've helped many different people understanding their value and uncovering their why and making it powerful enough to where they can create opportunities for themselves. And that gives me great values for me from a 5-star perspective.
That's awesome. And, I will say this, I was talking about this with another disruptor the other day. And we have high-tech society now, and it's getting even more high-tech. But even in history, the high-tech societies of the day, manufacturing, assembly line, and so forth, there has always been a taking over the individual creation, this conformity, this, this automaticity that takes out the human element and the component, right? And you're saying, and what you're doing, and people are being forced to do this, is that there is this element now of we're not conforming, and we have this high-tech society, and people like you are forcing the human element into it. It makes it for a very rich landscape for innovation. I don't know what's going to happen yet, right? I don't know what the trends are going to be, but people are being forced into this. And so what do you think? What do you think it's going to look like in the next 3 to 5 years? The more high tech we get, but this relentlessness to not conform and people be more humanized.
This is going to probably be one of the most dynamic renaissances in human history. And why do I say that? Because we have been using only one part of our brains lately, and that is our analytical side of our brain. From a scientific computational type thing. That creates a nice platform, but it's not necessarily creative. So with this new platform, as we start to expand out into a three-dimensional multiverse, metaverse type experience, it is going to expand us exponentially from an imagination standpoint. Your imagination is going to be unleashed. It's one thing to say, I like to go to the moon. It's another thing to be actually projected there in such realism that you cannot discern the reality from the fiction.
It's actually very true. And I will say this, science fiction has always been a precursor to technology. Science fiction books, science fiction ideas, science fiction imagination. It's been a precursor to, going on space travel, the moon, things like that. We now have the creator commerce. We have the metaverse coming out. We have what you're saying is very, very true. We are on the precipice of a renaissance.
Yeah, it'll be exponential. If you look at how the internet changed our lives, look how mobile and social has changed our lives. That, like you were saying, well, you weren't participating in it. Remember, I was talking about earlier, people weren't participating, in LinkedIn and things of that nature. Now you have to, right? You have to engage with these digital worlds because it's the way that we are living. Think about this. The Ubers of the world, they don't even own taxi cabs. The Airbnbs of the world, they don't own any hotels. You start thinking outside of the box just because you have digital enablement that think about what that can do for you as an individual. How can that expand your reach? You don't need to own expensive assets. Remember what I said earlier, I was in the IT industry. A lot of these things are super expensive. I don't want to buy and sell that. That's huge risk. But I can utilize cloud technology. I don't have to own anything.
Yeah.
And I expand and contract when I need to. That is a huge game changer. So now it's no longer where the privileged few have access to data center type technologies. It becomes now the masses have access to that same platform. Now, what can you create with it? Now, I said earlier about the creativity, what can you create with it is totally up to you. It's like music, your music.
And your own brand.
Your art, your brand is your brand. It's your world. How are you going to create that so everything else then fits into your tapestry of your world?
Yes. You are disrupting digital networking. You know that?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Grant, what do you do in your off time? Do you have any crazy passions or, what do you do when you're not like massively networking or helping people network?
And, it's all one world. A lot of times I'm involved with so many different groups these days. It just continues. But what I really like to do is create. I create videos a lot of times for my clients. And I took this on as a passion for the last 2 years and kind of really got into it. And I love it because I can listen to someone, talk to them, and then create a video representation of that individual or that endeavor, or what they're doing. in a 1 to 2 minute clip. And people really gravitate to that because that's bringing that realism out, taking just an aspect of someone and then put it into a short film. This is what I'm talking about earlier. Like before leaving on a podcast, you had to have a radio station. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have
now you can just be in your office, right?
You don't have to have a TV station. You don't need all these tools are now available. And if you apply yourself, you too can be very, very creative and utilize these tools to expand your world. So that's what I'm doing. I can't wait to do that even for my granddaughter. I can't wait to see what she's going to get into. She's only 6 months old now, so she got time. But
what is her name? Because you've spoken about her before. What is her name? She's the new love of your life for the past 6 months.
Oh yeah, for sure. Her name is Eliana. So Miss Eliana. Yep, Eliana.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. And her mom is Elon, so that's my daughter. So I got Elon and Eliana, and watching them grow into this world of 2022 as they move forward. I can only imagine, what her experience is. I think it's our responsibility. I will leave your audience with this. It is our responsibility to allow this next generation to create a new world. So let's help them.
And the mic just dropped. Grant, how do people get a hold of you?
Best way to get a hold of me is LinkedIn. Just go to Grant McGaugh, GrantMcGaughh. Then you can go to my website at www.5starbdm. That's B for brand, D for development, Infomasters.com.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you, Carla.
That's a wrap, everyone. If you learned something today or laughed, go tell someone about this podcast and tell people to go disrupt their markets, especially digital networking. Thank you for listening to the Disruption Interruption podcast, where we transform lives, change consumer behavior, never accept the status quo, and alter economics. Ciao for now.
Because we live in a highly litigious society, with America being one of the top litigious countries in the world, here's our legal disclaimer. This information is not intended to be a substitute for professional public relations or legal advice. Do not disregard seeking professional legal, healthcare, or financial advice, or delay seeking professional PR or legal advice because of something you have heard here. Contact an attorney to obtain advice on any particular legal situation or problem. Use of this podcast or our website or any of its social media or email links do not create an agency-client relationship between Johto PR and the user.